make use of your members to promote the meetup to their network. You don't feel like you have, as the organizer, you have to do everything. If you can get interested and enthusiastic members to help promote to their network, you're helping to spread the word.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to D2C Growth Mode, a podcast by Mayumoto where you learn from D2C experts tactics and skills to master your growth journey. Our guest today is Dennis Shiao, the founder and head of attention retention and founder of the Bay Area content marketing community. He's a content marketing rockstar with over 30 years of experience working in the tech industry, 20 of those leading content marketing strategies. And I'm super excited to chat with him today, not only about content creation, but also to challenge him to actually adapt whatever he learned throughout those 20 plus 30 years working in the B2B industry into the D2C realm. I got a chance to meet him last year at an online event that he actually hosted, and then at an in-person event also hosted by him. And one thing that I noticed about him is that he's not only great at content creation and content strategies as a whole, but also really great at connecting people and building a community. Dennis, thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited.
Thanks for having me, Mariana. Excited to be here. I'm excited to chat as well.
So let's dive right in. I'm actually interested in learning a little bit about what happened in your past life before you actually became this content rock star. So let's go back into your memories, and can you tell me a little bit about how life was like growing up and maybe the dreams you had and what you actually thought you would be as like growing up as an adult?
So my early life, I was raised in a middle-class family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, is a stay-at-home mom, and my dad worked for IBM. So he was a lifelong IBMer. I have a sister about 3 years younger, and we grew up in the suburbs. So I'm actually originally from the East Coast. Grew up a little bit in upstate New York and then in Westchester County, which is a little bit north of Manhattan. Did not pick up a New York accent, so I don't think I have any sort of accent. Let's see. So I think a lot of my initial career was inspired by my father because he was basically a software engineer working for IBM. Kind of aging myself, but when the IBM PC first came out, we got one in our family. This was a long time ago. And I then took a course in high school, AP Computer Science, and it was so fascinated by the logic needed or the logic involved in writing code, like writing an algorithm, that's what I wanted to study. So I actually went to college to get a degree in computer science. And the first half of my career, or the first chunk of my career, was in engineering. So I was a software developer. Then I transitioned into managing teams, and then I didn't transition to marketing until roughly 15 or so years ago, as a result of a company acquisition, and I had to find a new role within a new company. That's when I decided I wanted to get into marketing.
Oh my gosh! Okay, and then how was that transition to you? Like, was that something that you were actually interested in, or,
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I kind of am finding it a little funny that I'm calling my story interesting, but I feel like I'm bragging, but I had like a winding path. A long story short, I feel like in terms of like left brain, right brain, I did like tech, and now I do marketing, which is more on the creative side. I feel like I found my calling, and I'm much more natural being the creative type, creating content, creating copy, etc., as opposed to the more logical type. Because I realized quickly in my career that I was seeing my peers, my colleagues code, like I was seeing them develop code that was much better than mine. So I kind of realized that I was not going to be the world's best software developer. It just took me a long time to then go in. So I stayed in tech, but I am so comfortable where I am today, meaning I think I've really discovered my natural talents, and I really enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. And there's definitely one thing about content strategy that you also have to, I mean, be good at analyzing data, be good at like understanding the logic behind things. And even when creating content, it's not just like, even storytelling is very kind of, it can be very well organized in a logical process, right? So how did you think that those skills kind of prepared you for this content marketing?
Yeah, that's a really
world?
good point. It's in marketing, you can't just be creative, 100% creative, because your marketing operates in the context of a business. And often you need to use data to inform your decisions. So I use some of that background I have in essentially computer science to be able to analyze data and make decisions based on data. And then also more tactically, I work with a lot of clients who are technology companies. And often the task that I have is to take their message or maybe describe their product in a way that makes sense to business users as opposed to engineers. So I'm able to understand what their technology does and translate that in a way where I can communicate to the business user, who might either be the customer or an influencer on the decision, and communicate the benefit of a technical product in a way that a business user would understand. So I think I tap into my background in technology to be able to make that translation. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it requires a lot of empathy
Exactly.
too, right? To actually understand where this user is coming from and adapt the whole thing. And well, you mentioned already that you mentioned the computer that you just got, the first computer that came out and you had at home. But I was wondering about like all the transformations that you've seen throughout the years since you actually started in your career, and what is it about those transformations that you actually consider that made you wait? Let me just think of that. Rephrase that again. You have worked in the tech industry since 1999, and I'm curious about the transformations that you've seen during all of those years. And what have those transformations taught you about future innovations?
I feel, excuse me, I feel old because 1999 is a long time ago. I actually started my career before then. So I did work during the 90s. And so my first job out of college was, again, this is going to age me, but it was helping to connect businesses to the internet. So today it's a given that everyone's online.
Okay, I need to say this. Being like aging is great, like it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful process, and we're learning throughout this process, making the most out of all of those years, every month, every day that we live. So this is really beautiful. And please don't feel like bad or anything about it. Feel actually proud of all of the years that you've already been in this earth.
I still feel young at heart, so I still think of myself as like a 20-year-old kid, even though I'm not. But I've seen a lot. You're right in that I've seen a lot happen. So I started my career when businesses or consumers were not even connected to the internet. Today, everyone's connected. I saw the original web. So Web 1.0, there's now then there was Web 2.0, 3.0. I think what I learned is to always embrace what's coming, or like to embrace change and to get hands-on experience with new technologies, because what's new today is going to be a given 10 years from now. It's kind of like when the internet first came around, it was a novelty, and some people were like, did not come on board or come online for a while. They stuck to their newspapers or books or what have you. So I always try to see what's coming and just get some hands-on experience with it. Today, maybe that's like trying virtual reality goggles or experimenting with AI. So it's always to like get your hands dirty, if you will, and always know that technology means change. So embrace the change and don't be hesitant to experiment, and don't be afraid of change, because change is going to happen everywhere.
Yes. And I agree completely. And is there, now that you mentioned like experimenting, is there anything that you want to experiment on this year?
I think the one that everyone is on top of everyone's mind is artificial intelligence. So like ChatGPT came out, I think it was like October of 2022. So we're actually going to be going on 2 years with generative AI. I frankly have not done as much experimenting as some of my friends have. So I think I need to experiment both to understand the capabilities of generative AI, especially as it relates to content creation. And I'd like to get better at understanding what AI can and can't do and how it would make sense for business so that I can advise future clients on a strategy for incorporating AI into their marketing. So I don't think I can quite do that now. I'm not experienced or have enough expertise to do that. Some of my colleagues or friends have done that. They've actually pivoted their business to advise on, like in the past it was SEO and now it's advising marketing teams on incorporating AI. So that's something I want to do more of this year.
Nice, cool. And one thing about content marketing, so now I'm just thinking that you've been doing so for like this past year and a half, you're still writing all your content. Is that right? Because everyone is like using kind of ChatGPT to do a lot of stuff.
I haven't started to incorporate ChatGPT in some client work. So there's definitely not the case where I have an assignment to produce some copy and I'm going 100% to ChatGPT. But it's helping with things like brainstorming on outlines, or I can give it some copy that I've written and say, can you help me with it? So I've started to incorporate it. And I think I would like to do more experimenting just to learn how it can be useful. Now, there's a lot of stories out there of like bad examples where companies have decided to have all of their content be completely AI generated, and people can quickly determine that it is AI. But yeah, I've started to incorporate having it assist in my content creation.
Yes. Yeah. I remember I saw this. So we actually launched an AI documentary last year at the end of the year, I think. And there was one part of it that I remember this marketer saying, so there's a ChatGPT AI is great for a lot of things, but not for writing yet. So if you just don't use it for that, try to use it like for other things, like to actually discuss ideas, to brainstorm, even to review maybe, or give you like a better suggestions on things that you've written, but don't kind of like start to draft stuff in there and think that's going to come out great, because it's just going to look like everyone's, and then it doesn't look like it has like your own style to it as well. So yeah. And then one thing about content marketing that I really love, and I also like got to work with it for a few years in the past, is how inviting it is. And whenever I think of it and considering like marketing, if I would think of marketing as like this house, I would think of content marketing as the lounge area in a house where you actually welcome people in, make them feel comfortable, get to know them, let them get to know you too, like, you know, like art decoration you have, let them get interested. And I would actually think of social media as the windows in this house from where people can kind of like peek out and see what's going on inside. But they actually need to go inside to the lounge, to the content marketing area to understand and really engage with a brand. I wanted to hear your point of view about like what content marketing is and how relevant it is to actually create that kind of engagement with your audience.
First of all, I love your analogy. That's really, I hadn't heard that content marketing in that analogy, but I love it. The lounge and then the windows.
Thank you.
Hopefully, like social media is the ray of sunshine that's going to, come beam into your lounge. So here's my analogy. I think of content marketing as a trusted friend. So it's a friend that's going to be there to provide you with information that you can use to do your job better. So it's kind of like someone, let's just think of someone sitting on your shoulder, and you're going to wake up and they're going to say, here's a little nugget for you to think about today. So it's like someone that you trust and you get value out of. Now, of course, content marketing is in the framework of a business that's producing it or an organization that's producing it, and it can lead you down the pathway to consider that business, like doing business with that company. But it's not about what the company sells. It's in the context of what the company sells, and it's very audience focused to help the target buyer like your target ideal customer profile, do their job better. That way they can lead you can lead down the path towards buying what you provide. But it's really like that trusted friend that you get value out of, and you have complete trust in what they have to say.
And they are actually there to kind of help you make a decision, whether it is towards like becoming a consumer or a client of your business or not, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Which is really hard, because a lot of times businesses just want to talk about themselves, how great they are, and how this is the best option from all of the other options. How do you kind of navigate all of that with your clients?
Well, with my clients, I think it's often the case that they have bought into the concept of content marketing, because that's some of the services I provide. So they already get it. They come to me to help plan it and execute it. So it's kind of easy with my clients. I think in other cases where you're working at an organization and you have to justify the content marketing mission to your boss or to the C-level, maybe like the CEO or the CFO, that says, why are we investing in content marketing? Or they might say, show me the ROI on the content marketing. And sometimes that's a hard case to be made, that you can take your blog, say, and you can show directly how it translates to revenue. So it's important for content marketers just to show a holistic picture to the C-level or to your boss, and also understand the business objectives of the organization and find ways to connect the dots. So you have to find ways that your initiatives, say the content you're creating, can somehow connect to, this was getting back to what we were talking about data earlier, trying to find the data to connect the dots to show the correlation between your efforts and business results.
Yeah. And what is the best way to find that data? What would be your kind of favorite KPIs to keep an eye out?
I think I don't believe that there's like a common set of KPIs that are always going to work for you. So I think it's trying to understand what the context of your business and figure out, because sometimes there's going to be business specific KPIs. It could be revenue for a B2B brand, or it could be, if it's a nonprofit, it might be the key business benefit might be donations or membership. So you have to then translate KPIs to get to that business result. And often the place you go is wherever the measurement system that is close to your content. So for instance, on a website, it might be Google Analytics or another analytics platform that has that data.
Okay, and now I gotta ask this. Back when I worked with content marketing, we used to have the funnel. Then it kind of became this flywheel, because we wanted to focus on the end and the new beginning of the cycle. And I'm wondering about those funnel stages or the flywheel stages. Are they still relevant? Are they still the framework that you use? How is that going nowadays?
I still find the funnel model relevant, but there are a lot of different approaches you can take with your marketing. There is one practice called account-based marketing, which is more about there is an ABM evangelist who coined the phrase flip the funnel. So you take the funnel, which is wide at the top and narrow at the bottom, and you flip it so that you now have a very targeted, it's an inverted funnel. And account-based marketing is all about figuring out particular accounts or companies that may purchase your product, and using your content to target those specific accounts, as opposed to going wide and then trying to move people down your funnel. This is more about going straight to the source.
And then, so we're thinking of the funnel this way. And how do the coming stages work for them? So we focus on just imagine that instead of focusing on 1,000 different people in the audience, we are focusing on 10. And then, so it's supposed to open again later. How do the next
Well, it's more
happen?
When you flip the funnel, it's more about the 10 people or the 10 companies that might be the ideal customer to purchase your product. And the way it progresses is how much you are progressing at an account level. So maybe you've got 10 people that could be your potential future customers, and you're able to, let's say 8 of them never respond to you, but you've got 2 that replied to your email or that opened your email, what have you. And the funnel then progresses by going deeper with those 2 people. So you might eventually book a sales meeting with the 2 people, and eventually, let's say those two people become customers. So that's how things progress there.
Got it. Got it. So maybe when it actually gets bigger at the bottom, it's not because it's more customers, but it's because you have like more contact with them, or like better relationship with them. Got it. Nice. Okay, cool. And are there any other frameworks that you like using?
Not really. I'm not big on particular frameworks, but I think that the one fundamental that I always like to focus on to create content is a deep understanding of your audience. So the audience could be your prospective customers, your ideal customers, but you can't create really compelling content without deeply understanding them and providing answers to the questions they have, or providing maybe even things that they didn't know would be useful to them, but they end up are. And the analogy I would use is my wife. So my wife knows me so well that every time she gets me a gift, like it's maybe the shirt I'm wearing, I always love what she gets me. And I feel that she can find me things like she knows me better than I know myself. It's kind of funny to say that, but that's, I think, the goal you should have as a content marketer is to know, and it sounds like it's like not even realistic, but know your customers or know your audience better than they know themselves. And if you can do that, then you're going to create good content.
You got to love your customers then, like as much as your wife loves you. Yes. Cool. Yeah, I love it. And I can totally connect with that. And with and now one thing about the funnel too is that you can also a lot of times you would not create like 10 pieces of content for each step of the funnel. There would be kind of like a different percentage of time invested that would go to each stage. How do you do that? How do you make that decision? And is it always the same to every company, or do you notice that kind of decision changes depending on the situation, the context, and the results they're expecting?
So there is a discipline or a practice called customer journey mapping. I've participated in a workshop where we had someone come on this was in a past job. They were an expert in customer journey mapping, so they did an exercise with us. And it's really understanding all the different steps that a customer takes in becoming aware of you, evaluating your product, deciding between you and competitive products, and then ultimately purchasing. And the exercise is all around, okay, what are the different pieces of content that you created, and what did they use at each step? And then once you do that, you can determine maybe there's some content that got them into the funnel, if you will, like they became aware of you. And then there's this like one key step where they're deciding between you and one other competitor. And there's this one, let's say it's an analyst report or some report or some reviews that then they looked at that to make the decision. So then you can, in terms of your question about how do you prioritize the different content that you're creating at each stage, you can make decisions based on where you think is a balance between the cost or the investment and the benefit. So if there's like that one key step that is resulting in almost every customer win, that might be something you really want to invest in that step. But you also have to make sure you cover all the steps. So it's like once you understand what they're using when, you can make the right decisions on how much to invest in the content in each stage.
Yeah. And the journey mapping really allows you to understand those gaps, right? And see
exactly. There could be cases where you have a gap, like maybe you're losing customers or losing deals because there's something missing at one step. So that's also a good exercise to identify gaps.
Yeah. So one thing that I also think of is, so we have the different, the whole funnel, and a lot of times we would think that because the customer is going from the upper part of the funnel to the bottom part of the funnel, you should probably be building content that way too. And what I would do is kind of like almost the opposite, kind of build content from the bottom up. So because you can actually use that bottom part of the funnel, even if you don't have like a marketing going on, you can use that with your sales team and test them out. So what is your take on that? Is that where you kind of start?
I don't always, I think it's a smart approach because you always need bottom of the funnel content. And that's sometimes sales will tell you that's the most valuable because they're getting close to closing the deal. They need that one little piece to get the deal over the hurdle, maybe. But I don't, so it's a smart approach if like you just wanted to start with some bottom of the funnel content. But sometimes I often will determine what is the biggest need at the moment. So sometimes you might just need top of the funnel content just because they're lacking in some leads, say. So you just want to get top of the funnel content out there to get your brand, people aware of your brand. So you often have to go where the need is biggest and where you might make the largest immediate impact.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So first thing that you probably do is like understand the context of the business, the goals that they have, the results that they expect, and then kind of plan your approach. Nice. Okay. So let's imagine we are trying to build trust and brand awareness for a D2C brand instead of a B2B brand. Where would you start?
I would start. So this goes back to my analogy of understanding your audience. So let's say it's a DTC brand and you're selling to a particular type of consumer who likes, hairspray. It's getting out to understand before you talk about your company's hairspray, why do men or women need to use hairspray in the first place? Why are there cases where they might not need to use it on a given day? Like really get deep into all the background that leads them to eventually consider hairspray, and even get to know them outside of that context. So even there's the context of how your product can help them, but you should also identify, let's say the target for a hairspray product is women in their millennial women. So it's also important to understand millennial women as a whole, even aside from their hair, because you might be able to create offers or content that helps them, that then leads them to your hairspray. But as long as you can understand that target customer well enough, I think that's the key to success. So I would start with I kind of always advise people starting marketing plans, always start with your audience, because that's the key. The audience meaning your prospective customers. Start by deeply understanding them.
And what would be a tactic that you would use to actually deeply understand them?
I think interviews and conversations are a little underrated, meaning I don't see enough marketing teams speaking to their existing customers or prospective customers. And it's not very scalable because we always like to talk about programs at scale, like you can automate things. A conversation like the one we're having is a lot of it's something that you can't scale easily. Like you can't have a conversation like this 1,000 times in a week, or unless you're like, doing it all day. But I think conversations can really uncover things that you might not otherwise get from just looking at data. Like having a talk, seeing what the audience challenges are is key. And there's also specific interviewing tactics that are important to try to uncover insights. So things like open-ended questions where you might discover some fact about buying patterns that you otherwise you weren't expecting to hear this, but if you can uncover that insight, it can lead to some interesting ways to do marketing.
Nice. Okay. Yes. I love interviewing too. And I do find that a lot of times it's really hard to get people to actually spend the
Yes, it
time
is.
with you. Like, a lot of people have
Yes.
really busy lives. So sometimes you just start with like people you know, right? Like, and hopefully you know a lot of people in your audience. So that makes things
that's a good
easier.
point. It's hard to get people to commit time. And then even if you're online and speaking to someone, maybe they're distracted, or it's sometimes hard to extract the insights, but you have to keep at it, keep trying.
Yeah. Well, speaking about people, you're also building a very successful community here in the Bay Area. And I would love to hear more about that and about your trajectory actually to actually start the community, the goals that you had at the time, and how that's been going on for you.
So I founded the meetup in 2015. It was kind of a pretty simple story. I live in an area of the Bay Area called the Peninsula. It basically sits in between San Francisco to the north and San Jose to the south. And I liked going to events for two reasons. One is to stay educated. So it was like a talk, but they also had the ability to network and meet people. So I'd go to these events in both San Francisco and San Jose. Usually it's a featured speaker. They might serve pizza. Sometimes it's free, sometimes it's paid. But there was nothing like that where I live, which is in between those two cities. And the second thing that inspired, so I wanted to create something closer to home. And I also was inspired so I went to meetup.com and found some local. Oh, I'm back. So I went to meetup.com and found some local meetups, and I started attending them. And that inspired me to go to meetup.com and create my own. I didn't want to make it exactly like the other ones. But the original name of the meetup was San Mateo B2B Bloggers. So it was a little too specific because I limited it to the city that I'm in and a very specific type of marketer, which is B2B bloggers. So one of the lessons I learned was to make it broader if you're looking to get a broader audience. So it's now called the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. So it was launched. Meetup.com was a huge part of our growth because we are finding members. I think you probably found our meetup from being on meetup.com and finding us. So they're a big part of our story. But we also, another thing that happened was the pandemic happened to all of us, 2020. We used to meet once a month in person, and I was able to use the office building that for my employer at the time and just use our office after hours. When the pandemic came, we couldn't meet in person, so we shifted to online meetings on Zoom. And we were able to meet, at one point, we're meeting once a week, once every week. So in a given month, we had 4 or sometimes 5 online talks. And during the pandemic, when before we returned to getting together in person, like the years 2020 and 2021, a lot of people found us because they're looking for education on meetup.com. And they were, wherever you were in the world, you could attend as long as you were awake because you could just log into Zoom. So we significantly grew our membership during the early phase of the pandemic. I think we probably doubled our membership. And now we continue to do online meetings, and then we are starting to mix in, like the one you attended, an in-person networking event about once a quarter.
Cool. And what would be some of the advice that you could share for people that are also looking into building their community?
So there's like a chicken and egg problem at the beginning because you're starting with nothing. I find it very similar to an entrepreneurial journey because you're launching a meetup, you're trying to start and grow a community. It's similar to trying to start and grow a business. I remember the early days, it was like we had 5 members and maybe it grew to 10. I remember trying to figure out how am I going to get people aware of the meetup. So I was even thinking of going to the local Whole Foods and putting a little sign on their community bulletin board, experimenting with social advertising. Maybe I actually did list some of our meetups in the local newspaper, both online and print, like the San Mateo Daily Journal.
How did that work out? I'm curious. Did anyone come because of that?
Again, this is probably, I should have done a better job of setting some parameters in place to make the attribution. that we could track that you came from a newspaper ad. But I did have a related story, not related to the meetup, where I was volunteering for my daughter's high school music program, and I listed the concert because I thought the community, even though if you don't have kids in the local high school, they might want to come to a concert just to get musical entertainment. So there's one example where I listed the concert in the San Mateo Daily Journal, and then I met someone, a retired woman who was at the concert, and somehow I just she told me she doesn't have any kids in the school. So I said, "How did you hear about the concert?" And she said, "I saw it in the San Mateo Daily Journal." So I was like, "That's like a single, again, not scalable, but I was able to attribute the fact that I think I spent, I don't know, $25 to list that, but it was like I could make that attribution in that case." Yeah.
Cool.
And then the biggest learning on the meetup is to take advantage, or maybe the overused word is leverage. Make use of your members to promote the meetup to their network. So you don't feel like you have, as the organizer, you have to do everything. If you can get interested and enthusiastic members to help promote to their network, you're helping to spread the word. So I've had one of the active participants in the meetup group is named Rich. He actually is now the co-organizer with me because he was promoting all the meetups to his connections and recruiting speakers. And he did so much on that one person, Rich, that I said, "Why don't you just, we'll be co-organizers." And he said, "Sure." So leverage your members because they have a lot to contribute.
Nice. Okay. And keep it and focus and maybe keep an eye out for people that are more engaged to also help you out.
It'll be obvious who's the engaged people. You don't have to, it's not too hard to spot them. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And could you tell us a little bit about maybe brands or businesses that you feel like are doing a good job with either community building or content marketing?
Sure. It's kind of ironic, you're asking about brands that do a good job at content marketing. My example is an organization called Content Marketing Institute. Some of us call it CMI.
Okay.
So they were launched as an educational resource about content marketing. And they do their own content marketing. So they have a blog. So they publish informational articles every weekday throughout the entire year. So Monday through Friday, they publish one article each of those days for the entire year. So it's like a lot of content, and they utilize a contributor network. So they have a lot of people that want to contribute articles to the site because they know that there's such a wide reach that there's a benefit in providing your content to get published on their site. So they're a great example of doing content marketing, and they also have a great community. A lot of what inspires me with my meetup, I learned from being a part of their community. So it's both online. They used to do Twitter chats. They have a Slack group, and then they have an annual conference called Content Marketing World, where a lot of the community that interacts and engages with each other throughout the year, we get to go to a city and see each other in person. So it's like, I feel like it's being part of a family, which I think a good community should feel like you're part of a family. And that conference I call a family reunion, because every year I go, there's people that I want to see because I've connected with them in the community, and then I get to meet new people at the conference. So.
Oh, yeah. I could totally relate to that because that's how I feel it. I used to work with I used to manage this brand of beer. Actually, it was a beer brewery, a craft beer brewery. And we also had a yearly conference. And then it would be so fun because it was almost like meeting, these lifelong friends that, you just have so much in common. You have this passion about whatever it is that your product or your service is. And one thing that I feel like it's also special about some communities is the collaboration, as a pillar of the community, because it feels like a lot of times if we're working in the same industry, we could be competitors and not really help each other. And I feel like what communities really do is like to teach us that collaborating is actually very good for everyone and helps everyone grow. And there is not a way to like competing, just it's not like the way to go.
Yeah. Communities and collaborating. I think that's,
cool.
It's like, it's also fun. It's fun and rewarding because I think humans are wired to want to connect, to have human to human interaction. Sometimes people have these hard rules, like never share competitors' content, but like getting back to community, I just love the ability. I enjoy so much connecting with others in person because we spend so much time online that I think it's more special now when we get to interact face to face, and it's just so enjoyable. I think humans are wired to be with other humans.
You're right. And a lot of times, like our journeys, like I see that because you also have like you have your customers, but you're also an entrepreneur. And I noticed that a lot of times for an entrepreneur, it can be very lonely, to do your, like go on your journey. And so, connecting with people is relevant there too. And with just like your customers, you also have like this challenge of actually building and optimizing your own content marketing, I would bet, because you also have to create your own marketing, right? How is that for you? And how did those experiences with your own content marketing actually impact how you actually kind of guide your customers through and understand and empathize with what they go through? I have
one specific example that I think it's a good lesson, which is I have a email newsletter that I send out roughly every other week. Mm-hmm. It's called the Content Corner newsletter, and it's written for marketers. I launched it while I was still in a full-time role, so it was not like something that I was planning to do for content marketing for my business because I didn't have the business yet. But it's a way for me to get in front of an audience via email on a consistent basis. So I have to make sure I'm sticking to the schedule that I set out, like roughly twice a month. And it is a form of content marketing because unlike some email newsletters where it's like a brand just sharing links to their own stuff, I originally did curate articles and share links, but I have the first section of the newsletter. It's like the introduction, where I'm writing original content, like I'm sharing thoughts that are not published elsewhere. So it's a form of content marketing because I'm trying to be helpful to my subscribers. And I often share like something that I've observed or learned in my role as a marketer. So it's like hands-on learnings. And oftentimes I will take what I publish in the newsletter and then publish it on a LinkedIn newsletter, which I have, or on my company's blog. So I'm committed to creating an email on a consistent basis, and often it will feed into other content formats. And then because I launched this over 5 years ago. So I've been doing an email newsletter for over 5 years. And because I've learned how to use email, create content and send it via email, I can now offer that service to clients, which is help them launch their newsletter and actually put the content together for it. And then I also use this experience in the last few Content Marketing World conferences where I partnered with a friend named Ashley and we presented on email marketing. And it's all because I learned the whole process, the science and art, the art and science of email from doing it myself.
Cool. Okay. I like it that you actually mentioned email. I was going to ask about the different channels that you use for content marketing and what are the most relevant ones when it comes to you have to use these ones, what are those in your opinion?
People have been talking about the death of email, like email becoming irrelevant for many years. And I think it's probably as powerful as ever because like you mentioned, social media being like the windows of a lounge, and social media can be effective for finding an audience or even driving people to your website. But one of the big problems of social media is that the algorithms are controlled by the big platforms like X or Twitter or Meta, Snapchat, etc., TikTok, Whereas email is your direct channel to an audience. So getting people to subscribe to your email list, you have direct control of you getting in front of them, much more than you have control of your social media posts getting in front of an audience. So I think email is a key content marketing channel.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned also the website, like, because you actually need to drive people to the website. And what is like your so a lot of times we would use like a newsletter to kind of get people to share their contact information. What is your favorite way of doing that? Like going from their learning about your brand or your business, then sharing the contact with you in your own website.
So are you asking about how to, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So like, what is the best way, in your opinion, to get people to actually share their contact information once they get to your website?
See. I might go back to the same answer of email. So it's providing value such that you get their email address to provide them your content. So like, if they get to your website, you might even offer that you have this newsletter that provides value to marketers, and you just need to provide your email address to receive the newsletter. One marketer that I follow says that when you get a subscriber, so somebody is giving you their email address, they are subscribing to your future content, meaning you might show examples of your past newsletters, but what they're giving you their email address for is the promise of getting value in the future. So I think that's a great way to think about email subscribers, is like you're getting people to say, I raise their hand by giving you their email address. And there's a promise that you're going to provide them value, because if you don't, they will unsubscribe. Yeah.
Yes. So that's something important to keep in mind, right? It's not just like creating an ebook that says nothing. It has to actually say something and help. Nice. Okay. And what is it like, considering from my perspective, I feel like content marketing is like content as a whole, like there's just so much happening, so much content out there. And it can be really hard to like grab people's attention. So I wonder, what is it that brands can leverage? Like what kind of technologies or channels that they can leverage to gain a strategic edge and differentiate from other brands?
I'll give two answers to that. The first answer is if you're staying on top of some emerging technologies, let's say it's TikTok, your D2C brand, and this is TikTok 4 or 5 years ago when it was, some people had not heard of it. If you're early to a technology that develops or emerges, you have more exclusivity with your audience because you're one of the only brands in your space that is experimenting there. So I think it's finding technologies early, because then eventually everyone's going to say we have to be on TikTok, and then it's much harder to differentiate. But if you can use an early window to gain exclusive access to an audience, that's good. The second is, I'm sounding like a broken record, but going back to the audience, so you can differentiate yourself with how well you know your audience and give them things that nobody else is giving them, like the value. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Because they're probably just talking about themselves. So you can actually kind of find that gap and help the audience. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're going into like our last questions actually. And I actually always say like I have 3 final questions. So it's just not one. There are 3. The first one is, imagine that you have access to this beautiful wall, and then someone asks you to create like something to put in that mural, like beautiful mural outside a place that you love. What would you like to say in it? What would be the message there?
So if you would allow me to do 2 sayings, maybe I'll fit these 2 sayings in the same mural. And these are sayings that I've bought t-shirts that have these on the shirt because I just love these 2 sayings. The first is choose kindness, because we can make choices in life, but I think if we can choose to be kind to others, the world will be a better place. The second saying is, the future is inclusive. because I believe in respecting everyone for their differences and not excluding people for where they came from, who they are, etc. So I'm a big believer in kindness and inclusivity.
Oh, I would love to go past the mural one day. It would be
Yes.
really beautiful. And take
Excellent.
a picture in front of it. Definitely. Cool. And what about if you had a limited budget and you were building a new brand? Let's think of a D2C brand. And let's think of in this, there'd be so much that you could do with unlimited budget, but where would you start and what would be the last thing that you would do?
I would start with, and sometimes I feel like money or budget is overrated because I think a lot of things you can do with limited budget, or even some things you can do at no cost. But if I had unlimited budget, I would try to allocate that towards audience research. I know I keep saying this audience, but it's using some money to get real interesting insights from the people that you're trying to reach. And then the question was like, what was the last thing I would do? The last thing I would do, buying a Super Bowl commercial. Because you kind of need unlimited budget to buy a Super Bowl commercial, but I think there's better ways to spend your money.
Cool. Yeah, it's not only buying. Imagine producing all of that, like creating the idea, because it could completely fail too. Right. It's a big bet. Cool. And is there a book or any sort of other content format, maybe a documentary, a film that you love recommending to curious people?
So it's this book. The book is called Genius Makers by the author is 𝐀𝐛𝐨𝐿, and the subtitle is The Mavericks Who Brought AI to Google, Facebook, and the World. So we spoke about AI earlier, and I read this. When did I read this? I read this book in last year, and this was before there was there's a lot of people that are now well known in the space at companies like OpenAI and Meta, et cetera. So this book, let me just check the copyright date. It was published in 2021. So this was before the general population had broad awareness, because it was before ChatGPT came out. And this book actually goes through people that we are now seeing in the news, like researchers at OpenAI, and it helps explain how the researchers came up with things like neural networks that ChatGPT is based on. So it's useful for understanding a little bit. It's not too technical, so it's like it stays at a high level. It helps you understand how AI works, and it helps give the backstories on key people in the research community that were instrumental in creating the advancements that we now, I don't want to say take for granted, but like we use ChatGPT and it's so cool, but under the covers is all the, like beneath the surface, there's all these things happening. And the book kind of helps you see how that works and the people that were behind it.
Nice. Okay. I'm very curious now. You're sold. Yeah. Thank you for that. So before we actually go, Dennis, I would love to, just know like how people can actually get in touch with you or connect in case they want to. What would be the best way?
Would be LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, so you can look me up and connect. I would just mention this podcast as the context. So sometimes I will get an invitation with no message, so if I don't know the person, I will not accept. But if you send me an invite to connect on LinkedIn and mention that you heard me on this podcast, then I know where you came from.
Cool. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us and so much of your experience. It was so much fun talking to you today. And thank you for choosing kindness every time. That's really beautiful and inspiring.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you everyone for listening too. Ready for this episode's takeaways? Number 1, don't just read about it. Get hands-on with new technologies. Understand their capabilities and apply them to benefit your work. Number 2, create content as if you were helping a friend. Provide valuable information to customers that will help them make decisions that make sense to them. And number 3, consider building a community around shared interests for valuable learning and connection. That's also a great way to get to know your audience. This was D2C Growth Mode, a 𝐀𝐻𝐆 original podcast. Subscribe to get the hottest takeaways from all of our original shows every 2 weeks in your inbox. Happy emailing!